If you grew up in the late 1990s, then you know about the incredible games that came out in the newly established 3D era. The Sega Dreamcast was a second-generation 3D console, boasting a ton of power at the time with some great-looking titles to go along with it. One of those iconic games was Phantasy Star Online. PSO was the first console MMO and saw several releases across different platforms. Dreamcast had the original, GameCube had two versions of Episode 1 and 2, and this went on until Blue Burst was released. While this game had a niche online community, there was an offline campaign as well, letting you experience everything even after the official servers went dark. I've been playing PSO for the first time recently, and as someone who loves RPG speedrunning, I couldn't help but wonder what runs of this game looked like. That was a mistake. It turns out, PSO speedruns are a complete RNG nightmare. Seriously, it's like gambling, but worse. Today, I want to tell you about the Phantasy Star Online Episode 1's glitchless category, what all goes into beating this mess of a game, and of course why it takes a ridiculous amount of luck to complete a run quickly, if at all. Hey, if you're new here and you want to watch more videos covering topics like this one, subscribe to the channel. It's free and it would mean a lot to me as I want to reach my goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. With that being said, let's get into it. PSO is actually a very simple and linear game at its core. The goal is to travel through 4 major areas, fighting a boss at the end of each one. The run ends after you beat the final boss, Dark Fowls, and enter the portal for the episode's epilogue. Despite the game's linearity, there's a ton of options with how you can play the game. For the GameCube version, which the glitchless Episode 1 category is ran on, there's 3 main classes with 12 subclasses in total. Each have their own pros and cons, like forces generally having high starting magic strength, or MST to use abilities, but having less HP, attack, and defensive stats. Runners also name their characters a certain way to directly impact their section ID, which modifies drops during the run on that character. These quirks become important later, but for now, let's look at what the beginning of a run looks like. After talking to the principal on the ship Pioneer 2, runners will either go to the shop or go directly to the Forest 1 stage depending on what class they are. Monomates are usually picked up for HP recovery, and if the class uses techniques, runners will pick up monofluids as well. Horses will start with Foy, and runners will grab Barter or Zond if they show up in the shop at this point. After that, it's off to Forest 1, where runners will... Oh. This is where the RNG nightmare begins. When you enter an area, the game has one of a few map variants it can give you. In Forest 1, there's 3 of them. One that runners want to see, and the other 2 losing about 2.5 minutes compared to the best one. Changing this map mid-run requires a reset, and even if you go straight to the surface warp on Pioneer 2, it costs about a minute to get back to where you left off. While it's at the beginning of the run, there's a 2 in 3 chance for an immediate reset, which isn't terrible, but not great if you're going for a top time. After this, we finally get to play the game. To get through an area, you must find the teleporter at the end of it, blocking your way or doors spread throughout, requiring you to defeat monsters or hit switches to open. Combat is surprisingly deep, given that you only have a few offensive options. Horses will primarily use their techniques which deal massive amounts of damage. Even better, your techniques can't miss. For other classes that use physical attacks, they don't have it as easy. The ATA stat, or attack accuracy, directly influences if a physical attack will land or not. This immediately puts hunters and rangers at a disadvantage as they're mainly using their weapons for damage. This is a huge problem throughout the run, as you don't get enough levels for those stats to reach the point where hits are guaranteed. Putting it simply, runners will see this a lot. To break it down even further, if you're playing as a Humar at level 1 and you normal attack a Buma with a non-ranged weapon, it only has a 56% chance to land a hit on the first attack of that combo. Combos are structured in a way where you have the most accuracy on the third attack, so if you miss one, it's pretty bad luck. Cast and Conceal subclasses don't have techniques, but they do get traps to help deal damage, freeze, and confuse enemies, giving them a unique option. As runners go through each area, they'll be feeding their mag with items they pick up. The mag gives stat bonuses based on what you feed it, and is extremely important for meeting certain thresholds for equipping weapons or learning techniques. With all that out of the way, Forest 1 and Forest 2 don't have much going on besides killing monsters, grabbing money, and hoping for decent gear. This includes armor that has slots. These slots are used to equip extra stat increasing items, which we'll talk about later in the video. After getting through these areas, runners reach the first boss of the run, Dragon. Dragon is the first boss of the run and is actually pretty easy. It does have a few attacks like breathing fire, a physical attack when you get too close to it, and an underground attack. Most of these can be avoided by simply walking around and attacking the dragon from its side, as it turns very slowly. Once you deal enough damage, the boss staggers and you can attack its head repeatedly. The underground attack is very hard to avoid and deals a lot of damage. To anticipate where the dragon charges at, runners open the full map to see where it spawns and the path it takes. To deal damage, some forces will spam Barda, while other classes will use their guns and sabers. Even though this is an easy fight, it's only the beginning of this mess of a run. Defeating the dragon unfortunately opens up one of the most frustrating mechanics of the run, teching. Certain boss drops and dungeon containers have a chance to drop a teched weapon. These shows up as a question mark before the weapon name. They can be taken back to the techer on Pioneer 2, where they'll reveal what the weapon is. The outcomes can range from complete trash to the best thing since sliced bread. It's basically gambling, but it's part of what makes or breaks a run. When these mystery weapons are teched, they'll turn into elemental weapons, with runners wanting fire, thunder, or shadow to use at various points of the run. On top of that, you can re-tech something by saying no to the techer, teching its special up or down a rank, along with modifying its stats and affinity-based bonus damage. The weapon shop can also roll elemental weapons, but that's not really something runners can rely on either, since it's completely random and can cost you a lot of money. With technique using classes, it's a lot less complicated, as you just need to power these up through higher levels or upgraded versions. These can also come from random drops or shop purchases, with runners wanting to see things like Foy or Barda at level 2 early on. To go really fast, however, drops like Gifoy or Gizan need to happen early, since these are AoE techniques that can wipe out enemies fast. Ideally, this would happen right after the dragon fight. Next up are the caves, and there's a total of 3 areas here. If runners get to this point, a lot of factors come into play before continuing the run. Normally, bad maps would be a reason to reset, but a bad map can be redeemed with great techs or weapon drops. Runners will check out the first part of caves for their weapon drops, then use a telepipe to warp back to Pioneer 2. Telepipes, especially free ones from random drops, are super useful for checking random untechted weapons or shop items. Also, it's a good way to reroll shops since they change every time you go back to Pioneer 2. For caves, shadow and fire weapons are huge drops to get. Thunders are important too, but are mainly used in mines and beyond. When it comes to the weapon types, there's a big variance depending on your class. Classes like HuCast will use sabers, swords, brands, and partisans. Uniworld will use daggers, and Rangers will use handguns and rifles. This is where that section ID really comes in handy. Some characters will want section IDs that match up with their preferred weapons, and others will want Orin, which has a higher chance to drop daggers. Daggers have a higher sell price than most weapons, so if runners don't need a specific drop, they'll have the Orin section ID assigned. Back on the topic of elemental weapons, instant kill weapons have the highest risk but highest reward since they can instantly kill enemies, but they tend to miss a lot of the time. Elemental weapons come in tiers, which affect damage and how often they activate, with instant kill special weapons having Dim, Shadow, Dark, and Hell. Dim and Shadow will show up during these runs, so let's take a look at the chances of getting an instant kill with a rifle and a ranger that has 100 in the ATA stat. These rates are ridiculously low. Not only do you have to roll the instant kill ability and succeed, you have to roll the instant kill and win that too. Still, it's better than using a normal weapon at this point of the game, so runners go with it and hope they get lucky. Some of the monsters here are very annoying and show up in big groups. The shark enemies will group up on you, poison lilies can poison or paralyze you, but for physical characters, nano dragons are the worst. If you mess up your combo or miss an attack, They can fly away and lose you a lot of time. Now, if runners are really lucky, they can see gnar lilies during a run in the caves. These have a 1 in 500 chance to spawn and can put runners ahead if they have maps with bad experience routing. They not only give you 150 experience, but they can drop units, enhancing stats when slotted in armor. Another thing that gets introduced in caves and beyond are traps. Different from the player traps I mentioned earlier, these are invisible mines that explode when you get too close, dealing damage and sometimes even status effects. The game usually slows you down when you walk into them due to the lock-on system doing just that, but if you have a menu up, that doesn't happen and you can run right past them before they explode. Since traps are static with each map variation, skilled runners know exactly how to avoid any trap. The boss at the end of the caves is Dayrola, and of course it is a ridiculous fight. The boss is a giant sea creature that can attack in several ways. It'll shoot some spines at you that can follow your movements and then explode. It'll also fire lasers from its body that are hard to dodge. It can cause rocks to hit you for a lot of damage. It'll also latch onto the boat, attacking you with its tentacles. And finally, it can shoot lasers that hit locations in a vertical fashion. To beat this boss, you can either deal a ton of damage to it with something like Gifoy, or you can break off its mask and attack its face. This can be done while it's swimming, but the best time to do it is when it latches onto the boat. While dodging its tentacle attacks, you can get in several hits before it detaches and moves on to its next attack. If you have a character that can use a brand and you get one, that's huge damage for the fight. For ranged characters with guns, they can get hits in while Dayrola is doing things like its laser attack, but overall it's still slower. As someone who's playing through PSO right now, the understanding of movement in this game is huge when fighting bosses like this one. It's not that intuitive as there's a windup before you start running. Combined with lock-on canceling and orienting your character to actually hit your target, seasoned runners make this look a lot easier than one would think. After Dayrola is finished, there's another required trip back to Pioneer 2 before heading to the mines. If needed, a shop trip happens to get any items or weapons in case any drops happen from the later half of the caves up to Dayrola. The mines are up next, and it's back down to 2 areas for this section. The enemies here are mostly androids that are weak to the thunder element, which is why those spells and weapons are essential when going through. Since we're at the halfway point, another big thing to think about are the reinforcement items for protective gear. Defensive armor can come with slots for these items and are used to increase your stats. For example, Night Powers will increase your ATP by 5 points, and Digger HPs will increase your max hit points by 10. Runners can either get lucky with these from drops or get them randomly from the guard shop starting at level 11. Most characters need these additional stats on top of any mag bonuses to use the weapons or techniques they need. Stat material drops are also important, as these are single-use items that can increase your stats even further. For Mines combat, Gizand is insanely powerful here, as the robots group up and only take a couple of hits to kill. Thunder element weapons are used by other classes to pick up the slack, but don't go nearly as fast as using Gizand. The boss of the mines is Vol Op, a 2-phase fight that's actually easier than it looks. The first phase involves either attacking monitors to destroy Vol Op's virtual form, or destroying attack nodes that pop up in the middle of the phase. For hunters and rangers, this is a very easy task since they can stunlock the boss by attacking the monitors with their guns. Forces can't use this strat, but they can use Gizand to do huge AoE thunder damage to the boss, ending the phase quickly. Phase 2 puts you in a small arena with Vol Op's massive robot form. This part of the fight is more straightforward, but you do have to dodge a bunch of different attacks. There's the stomp attack that comes in bursts of 3 after a long charge up, there's an electric ball attack that will chase you, and finally a homing missile attack. All of these are easy enough to dodge if you're prepared, especially the missile attack since you can cozy up to the boss and it will never hit you with it. The weapon choices across classes are pretty much the same as the first phase, with forces again being the fastest since they can use Gizand over and over to quickly kill the boss. Before unlocking the next area, the game requires you to have activated 3 runic pillars up to this point. There's one in Forest 2, Caves 2, and Mines 2. I only mention this because runners have forgotten to do this before, locking them out right before the last leg of the run. With that being said, Ruins is up next, and the gap gets even wider between forces and the other classes. The enemies are very strong at this point, boasting HP counts in the hundreds, so the instant kill ability of shadow weapons comes in clutch. Remember, these have a high chance of missing, so you might be shooting enemies in ruins for a while. With forces, Gifoy is insane against a lot of minions, dealing around 100 damage with each hit. However, a variety of spells and game knowledge are needed to deal with the varying types of enemies, especially in Ruins 3. If you don't have elemental weapons or techniques at your disposal, sabers and partisans will have to do the job here. Runners will do one last shot before going into the final boss room, stocking up on items and whatever else they can get. With that being said, Dark Fowls is the final boss of the run, and the fight is a complete mess. After killing a small group of enemies before the main boss, runners enter Phase 1, which is the dragon form, consisting of Dark Fowls spawning waves of enemies while doing attacks of their own. These magic attacks are doing around 100 damage and show how important it is for high HP going into the fight. Even though it can be frustrating, Phase 1 is kinda tame, but Phase 2 is where things get ridiculous. Dark Fowls starts floating on the sides of the map and uses strong magic that can one-shot many characters without HP buffs. There's even an HP drain attack that can't be dodged, which is a hard stop for anyone that doesn't reach that threshold. The only exception here is if runners can get escape doll item at some point, giving them a one-time auto revive if the holder dies. When it comes to fighting Dark Fowls, half of the forces are going to Barda for damage unless they get something like Grants with Fomarl, which is the strongest ability in the game. For classes that use physical weapons, they have it a bit worse than forces, but techniques like Shifta can help some classes up their damage output. The last thing runners do to dish out massive damage is use their mags' Photon Blast. When you feed your mag enough and in a certain way, it can change into a different form. Certain forms will give it unique Photon Blasts that can deal over 600 damage to Dark Fowls. While a lot of this is luck leading up to this point, it's important to understand the amount of game knowledge and skill it takes to hold your own against this boss. Timing movements, when to attack the ads it spawns, and other minor things can mean the difference between life and death during this fight. Since this is normal mode, runners don't have to deal with the third phase of this fight. They just grab the ring and the run is over after they exit the area. The fastest time for this run is a 1:24:30 by Kai with the Phonum class. Thanks to the ability to use strong techs earlier than anyone else, along with having boosted Gi and raw techs, he speeds through the game if all the right conditions are met. The only other class that comes close is Phoneural, with Kai having a time of 1:29:50. The main problem with this class is she falls off in mines, as she only has boosted base techs and a lower MST than Phonum. This means she can't use higher level techs as early as Phonum, giving her a disadvantage there. All of the other classes are much slower than these two, with them clocking in records between the high 140s and high 150s. With that being said, what are the actual chances of getting a run like this with Phonum? All of the upcoming drop chances are based on the normal difficulty, unless stated otherwise. Getting a Gifoy and Gizan drop early after Dragon is huge, but it's kind of rare. Each drop from a box has an 18% chance to be a tool, then for it to be a tech disc is another 9.95% chance on top of that. The chance of these independent events to both happen is a 1.791% chance. Then, the disc has to be a Gifoy, which is a 4% drop, or a Gizand, which is a 3% drop. For Gifoy, this comes down to a 0.07164% chance to happen. For Gizand, this is a 0.05373% chance. In this case, Kai got both in her world record Phonum run in the same room. If we consider the probability of all these independent events, getting both of these at this point in the run is an insane 0.0000384,922% chance. This not only speeds up caves and other areas, but allows runners to save their Meseta for other gear like 2-slot frames or Digger HPs at level 11 from the shop. Oh, and by the way, the shop after going back to Pioneer 2 gave Kai a 3-slot frame, which is more than what she needs for the end game. Kai also got Escape Doll drop, which she used to survive an HP drain at the end of the run. She got this from an Evil Shark in Caves 1 and is another very uncommon drop. There's a 28% chance to roll an item drop from this enemy, then a 98.4375% chance to roll a regular item drop. Next is a 1 in 3 chance to roll the tool drop, and a ridiculous 0.5% chance for the scape doll. For all of this to happen, it's approximately a 0.04547815% chance. Finally, Kai got 2 HP material drops from Mines and Ruins. The Canadyne HP material drop from Mines 1 came out to be a 0.1088403% chance, and the Del Sabre drop from Ruins 1 was a 0.1319436% chance. Both of these happening in a single run comes out to another ridiculous 0.000143678% chance. This all doesn't even include the chances for at least a 2-slot armor, the Digger HP units, and all the other wild stuff that happened, like getting a Refoy drop from Vol Opt and the add slot item from a box in Ruins 1. This is an extreme case of how lucky a run can actually be, and while some stuff wasn't perfect, like some of the maps, this Phonum record is likely to stand for a very long time. Many PSO Episode 1 runs won't even get through caves, let alone to Dark Fowls. Most of the classes just don't have the HP or the gear to win without grinding or getting lucky. Still, runners enjoy the game enough to keep doing attempts even when the deck is stacked against them. As someone who used to run a game with massive swings of RNG like this one, I completely understand the feeling when things finally go right. Getting that one run that breaks through the terrible luck and meeting your goal is a feeling like no other, and I'm sure runners of PSO experience that as well. If you enjoyed, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one, and join me on my quest for 100k subscribers. Also, please check out the runners I featured in this video. Their links are in the description, along with the game's resources used to make the vid. Stay hydrated, folks, and thank you all so much for watching.